All right, welcome to a Monday night edition of Let Freedom Ring. My guest from the Morse Code podcast, Dan Morse. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We had Soapy on the other day, so it only made sense, to have you, come on tonight.
Smart move.
Yeah, it was he was a great interview. He was.
I think you did a great job. Very proud of him.
Yeah.
I think you did
Yeah.
very well. First time being on the bright lights on the silver screen. I think he carried himself in the show very well.
Well, like I said, I was like, this is just public access. Don't worry about it. I mean, unless you say something really crazy.
I know that was hilarious. I can't believe
you
you brought that up. No, I was just messing around with him. But
Oh no.
I will say, man, that's a pretty sweet setup they have down there
Yeah. No, that studio
for a
was
local
great.
New Hampshire public access
Yeah.
auditorium, whatever it even is. What is that? Like a local
It's town hall.
Yeah. Okay,
So
cool.
literally, there's been town halls having their meetings right next door. But shout out to Justin and Nick; they do a great job running that. They had Dave Carter do the play-by-play for the buddy of mine who's going to be on the show for the Merrimack BG game the other night.
Okay.
So the Merrimack Public Access has taken over high school sports during COVID. So
Yeah.
definitely check them out. But let's get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Where are you from? Where are you from now? Where did you grow up?
So I am from Nashua. I'm a Nashua kid. So I obviously grew up in Nashua. All the middle school is Nashua High. I really, I guess, ventured out of Nashua come college, like kind of into Soapy's story. I met him at UNH, and then from there, I went back home for a little bit after I graduated. But it's mostly been like Seacoast, New Hampshire area after that, like Dover, New Hampshire, Portsmouth area. And then my wife is from Portland, Maine area. So most recently, that's where we're at now. We're in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, actually. But
Okay.
so from Nashua, but been around the Portland, Maine area the last 5 or 6 years.
All right. No, I like Portland. You definitely have you been to Duck Fat?
I have. I've heard of it. I can't recall if I've been there or not. Is that you're a big poutine guy, right?
Yeah,
Is that why?
they would have loved to have them. Obviously, the Poutine Fest did not happen the way it usually does this year. But yeah, they're fantastic. Definitely check them out if you get a chance.
I've heard nothing but phenomenal things.
Yeah. But what's one thing that everyone should know about you?
Oh, geez. Yeah, Soapy, that too. I probably should have been prepared for that. I don't know, man. I mean, like, not for nothing. Kind of like Soapy said, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I love doing stuff like this. Don't take anything too seriously. Big sports guy. I don't know. Try to do a lot for my family. Try to kind of take things as they go. So, nothing much, man. I think nothing crazy you need to know about me to probably enjoy today's conversation.
All right. And last question, sticking with the theme of the show, which is Let Freedom Ring. What does it mean to you to be an American?
That's an excellent question. Again, similar to like what Soapy said, obviously we don't have the same background and stuff, but at the end of the day, man, I think it's just having, not to keep harping back on the word freedom, but having the freedom to think independently, to kind of be independent in as far as what ventures you want to take, what you want to do. We're lucky enough not to have to grow up in a place where our lives are kind of dictated from the time we're 5. You know what I mean? This is who you're going to spend your time with. This is what you're going to do. I just am grateful and obviously everyone, probably most people listening, very grateful to kind of have that autonomy in our day-to-day, in our life to, for the most part, do whatever the hell we want to do. So I think that's at its root, is probably as simple as it gets.
All right. No, good answer. Kind of like Creed Bratton once said, I already won the lottery. I grew up in the USA.
Amen.
I was born in the USA. All right. It's going to go into current events. Lot going on. I totally spaced this. I guess Trump and Biden are actually going to debate tomorrow, which get your popcorn ready for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Trump is going to get his, depending on how it goes through, he's looking to get his third justice on the Supreme Court. Her name's Amy Coney Barrett. It's
Mhm.
going to put the Supreme Court at a 6-3 advantage going for the conservatives. Any takes on that? Are you concerned when the Supreme Court goes through such an advantage?
I don't know if I'd personally say I'm too concerned about it. To be perfectly honest with you, you're probably more cut up on this than I am. I remember when it first. I mean, and I'll probably let you fill in any holes in my answer here, but just kind of catch me up to speed a little bit. This really took off obviously when, Jesus, what's her face passed away.
Yeah, Ruth
Ginsburg,
Bader
right?
Ginsburg. Yep.
So there's the open seat, and from my understanding, I also remember didn't I think I read or I remember them talking about something similar happened during Obama's term as well and it was like hundreds of days out from the election, right?
It
And they're
was
like,
it was
good,
March, and the election wasn't until November.
okay,
Uh,
which is interesting. But my question was that going into was that his first term or his second term?
This was Obama's term, so he couldn't run for re-election at that point.
Okay.
So with the conservatives or the Republicans, I say, Mitch McConnell said that's his proudest moment was
Yeah.
blocking that Supreme Court pick.
Yeah.
But now it seems very hip. In his exact words, we'll let the American people decide that who's
True.
going to get that pick. But now we are less than we're a little over a month before the
Month.
election,
Crazy.
and they're trying to rush it through. I mean, for me, what it's really saying is, and I guess this is how it is. If you got the senators, you get to make the rules.
Right.
Um,
Well,
so
the
it,
reason
it
I asked about what term it was because obviously if it was his second term, we knew he wasn't going to be the president by that time.
exactly, yep.
Trump, I guess I can understand, we don't necessarily know if he's not going to be the president during the majority of her first 4-year runs. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, I do agree with that. And some people are saying, even conservatives are saying, well, if he wins the election, then there's no debate on
Doesn't
this.
matter. Yeah, exactly.
So
I don't know. I mean, the other thing that's interesting, it sounds, and I would assume the majority or one of the bigger reasons why he's rushing to get his pick in there is it sounds like he's already like planning his objection to the results of the election based on
yeah,
balloting and all that stuff. So again, I really don't want to get too much into that stuff, but as far as your question about my thoughts on the story, I think it's an interesting story. It's a race against the clock. I don't know what that. Maybe you know more than I do, like what the process looks like. Okay, here's who I want in there. What's the in between before she's formally in there? Do you think it's actually a realistic time frame for her to be in there by?
I think so, because this is not going to go down like the Brett Kavanaugh when he was going in. All of a sudden, there was all these allegations against him.
That was great
And
television.
so that had to go in front of the Senate, and he had to kind of defend himself. Now, we knew what the vote was going to be. There was you weren't going to flip the Republicans on that. So it was a big spectacle. I don't think she has as much heat on her as he did. So I could see this. It's funny because you see a lot of headlines saying there's so much concern. When I did my own research on her, I was like, all right, she sounds like a typical conservative. I didn't see. Now I'm reading articles, that she'd like to see Roe versus Wade overturned. I don't think that's ever going to get overturned.
That's
I
a hot
really
take.
don't.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. And a lot of the debate too, I think, is I can't say for sure whether Trump's other picks have been horrible. We just don't really know yet.
Good point.
But these are lifetime appointments, so they're going to have a stranglehold for a while.
Well, my other question was, I mean, a lot of the controversy too was around this was against Ginsburg's wishes too, right? She was.
To my understanding, I've heard that. I heard that after the fact. I didn't know.
Me too, but
you had said that before, but.
Yeah, but I also don't understand what's the formal ruling? Do we have to go with what this woman wanted, or is there something in place, whether it be the Constitution or whatever, that says, hey, as soon as there's a vacancy, it needs to be filled ASAP? Because it's tough with these things, because if there's not if there was just a direct by the book, this is what's supposed to happen, it wouldn't be an argument. It wouldn't be an issue. Here's what we have to do. He's just doing his job. It seems like there's a lot of gray area with this stuff, which makes the conversation, but. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like we both said. I mean, it's obviously out of you and I's control. I'm just at this point. He's made his decision. Now it's just seeing if it happens or not while he's actually still in term to, take advantage of it. Not take advantage of it, but be there while she's in the seat.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, am I totally I don't see a lot of things. I don't see Roe versus Wade being overturned. Now, someone's
Mm.
obviously going to comment on this and be like, "Dan, you're crazy." They're going to I just don't see
Yeah.
it. I don't even
No.
think that's where Kavanaugh stands on it either. So,
Hmm.
um, the headlines are always so interesting when things
Yep.
like this happen because it's all doom and gloom. We'll have to see exactly what goes down.
Yep.
But we also recently very tragic story in our state. Um, we had a missing hiker from Keene. To my understanding, he said to people he was going out hiking. He was definitely in that area,
Hmm.
but he was murdered by Armando Barron and his wife, Brittany Barron.
Yep.
Do you have a chance to read up on this? I mean, some of this is like out of a horror movie.
I certainly did, and I'm glad you sent me the article last night because I never even heard of the story till you sent it to me. When did this? When was this from? Like when did this?
Like last week.
Okay, cool.
And a lot of
Um,
people I'm seeing these posts shared by people I actually know. So
yeah,
people
yeah,
knew this
yeah.
guy, that I knew. So
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. No, it's certainly an interesting story. I mean, it sounds like well, I'm actually curious. You mentioned him and his wife. Were they married or were they just like dating?
yeah, so
'Cause I think that makes it a little different.
Armando and Brittany were dating. I think
Okay,
she was having an affair
an
with
affair with
Jonathan,
the dead guy.
and Armando, from what it sounds like, lured him using his wife's phone,
Mm.
and then had him at gunpoint. Um,
Modern day problems require modern day
just
solutions.
yeah,
That's what you
you
got to do to
know,
get them out there.
you
That
don't
is
know
that is
who sent you.
crazy.
Yeah.
That is one of the crazier things, dude. Between like when the whole like catfish thing started coming out and this and that, it's like when I'm talking to someone over the phone or online, I'm just naive enough to assume it's the person I'm talking to, but
It's
you never
true.
know. And one of the craziest parts of the story, I guess, just to like sum it up. Again, so it sounds like the woman was having an affair with the guy. The husband or the boyfriend found out, used that to his advantage to get the guy to like meet him out in the woods,
Yeah, they
basically.
met. I believe they
Well, he
met in
thought it
a.
was the woman getting to
He
meet him
thought it
out.
was her.
Mm.
And yeah, he tricked him, had him at gunpoint, shot him, had her cut his head off.
That's the
Um,
interesting part. I thought it sounded like he used the girl as like a pawn in killing
yeah,
him, like a
yeah,
gun to your head. Hey, cut this guy's head off. And then the
yeah,
other crazy part was they drove him like 200 miles out in the middle of nowhere to start.
yeah. And he beat her up pretty good. If you see
Mm,
the mug shots too.
certainly did. Yeah, certainly did.
So
Keene's an odd place. Have you been to Keene at all? Like Keene State, like Pumpkin
oh
Fest?
yeah, I used to go. And I will give Keene State this for rugby. They had the best drink ups that there
Okay.
were. So
I've never had a bad time at Keene State. Like I had plenty of friends there, but I certainly would never want to live out there.
yeah,
The story certainly doesn't make me want to make me want to change my opinion on that.
yeah,
But it is kind of scary, man. That you're right. Like that is right out of a Stephen King novel or like a
yeah.
Netflix series or something, and it happened 2 hours away. My one of my thoughts was imagine being someone else like out in the woods, like seeing this stuff. Granted, I don't think many sane people are out in the woods in the middle of the night, but you never know. It's like that's one of those things where you see that, and it's like in the movie, like if you see it, and then the bad guy sees you see it, it's like, oh crap, like now
They're
I'm
coming for
involved in
you
this too.
too.
I gotta get out of
Yeah,
here. But no, that was a wild story. In the way you explained it last night when we were just chatting off air, by far one of the more like grisly, bizarre stories locally certainly in recent time.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Another wrestling shout out, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Don't trust anybody.
No,
You never know
don't.
who you're talking to. Might
It's
wind up
it's
out in the woods.
it's pretty wild. I mean, the story grabbed my attention because I haven't done a lot of hiking more recently, but I've always been a big hiker,
Mm-hmm.
and I have hiked alone quite a bit.
Really? At night?
Oh yeah.
Like in the dark?
No, never at night really.
Yeah. Still.
As far as, but there's some. You just never know who's out there. I mean, I don't think that they got him. It wasn't nighttime when he tricked him. So,
Oh, true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but
Well, that's my other question. Like, if you think an affair, obviously I assume she was asking him to come out to do, I don't know, like something sexual. Like, what would you, why would out in the middle of the woods be a meetup for a man and a woman to do whatever they wanted to do.
Well, it was. I don't believe it was in North Conway. So I mean, there's all types of stuff to
Oh,
do
okay.
there,
Mm,
in the town there. So I don't know. Who knows the whole
who
details?
knows? Yeah.
It all will come out. But I do feel bad for his family.
Mm,
I don't think anybody deserve. I don't care if get a divorce.
yeah, yeah.
No one's life needs to be taken over a
Right.
situation like that. But there's a fine line between love and hate, and
Mm. Someone
that's
crossed it. Yeah. So
so.
what is the way maybe I just misread the article. Is the woman it sounds like the like is the woman like not is the woman like off clean because she was like being
uh,
threatened to do this stuff and she came
She
to the
would.
police or she
No, she's
charged
got
just the same?
her mugshots out there, but I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we don't know. I think they have to charge her.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if everything it could be dropped before, or she goes to in front of a jury as well.
Mm,
Um, I think there's still that's gonna come out. This is
sure.
this is just breaking. We truly don't know that she was having an affair. We really
Right.
don't. For
Right.
all we know, she was on a dating site, met
Yep.
this guy, so
Hmm.
it all will come out. But it's
I'm intrigued. I'll probably
yeah,
be following it. Yeah.
yeah.
I have there's a lot of questions that I have that I need some answers to that hopefully WMUR can provide.
Oh my God, and
Yeah,
like I said,
crazy.
when this first came out, it was all the hiking pages that I'm on. They were talking
Oh
about
yeah.
this
I
missing
bet.
hiker, and then more came out, and more came out, and I was just like, Jesus,
Gotcha.
this
So
is this is insane.
how long was he missing before this story was discovered?
I don't even think it was discovered. I think he was missing within a week. They figured all this
Oh,
out.
okay. Hmm.
Um, Definitely was a post going around from his best friends being like, my friend was murdered, and all this other
Yikes.
stuff. So just tragic.
Because he was decapitated, right? So they must have
Yeah,
found him, either his head or his body. Like that must have been a pretty scary thing to come across.
yeah. Not I would not have been one to be the person that came
Yeah.
across that. But very very horrific stuff, and
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see what comes out more. But very tragic. He was only 25 years old.
Wow, that's crazy.
Just
Yeah, it's
just
sad.
horrible.
Hmm.
Going into politics, not too much on the agenda on this today, but
Okay.
I just have some general questions. What do you think is the driving force in our division in the country?
Um, it's a good question, and it's actually a well-timed question because we literally, my wife and I just watched, and I'm not a big like pro documentary guy, stuff like that, but there's a pretty good one on Netflix called The Social Disconnect or something like that, Social Dilemma. And a big part of it is how the social media platforms have caused the biggest divide between left and right since like 2008 or something like that. I forget the date. And with everything going on today, I think that's certainly a part of it. I think just the ability to have these public platforms where anybody can go on and for the most part say whatever they want, right or wrong, if it's the opinion that's the same as others, whatever. I just think so I think things like Twitter and Facebook and just things being able to go viral so quickly have really kind of been a catalyst for a lot of this stuff. Because just think about it, and I know you and Soapy kind of talked about it last time with riots and stuff stemming from the Breonna Taylor incident. The night of, and then the recent ruling coming out. That's what you want to call it. This stuff wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today 10, 20 years ago because it's on Twitter instantaneously. You can literally go live on Facebook, live on Twitter from a riot from somewhere, and everyone sees it now. Everyone has a platform publicly to react, and other people can comment on those reactions, and it just extrapolates from there. And you can say the same thing with the election, right versus left, Democrats and Republicans. I don't remember a time before like this where I would log on and like I know more about my friends and family than I ever have before because I can log on and see them do something as simple as liking a post or liking a meme or posting something. And it's like, wow, I didn't know you were pro Trump or I didn't know you were pro Biden or whatever. Not that it's right or wrong either way, but I just think that served kind of as a catalyst to, I don't know if it's the actual thing that's dividing us, but it's publicizing it and it's putting on
Yeah.
a bigger platform. I think the fact that for the most part, maybe not so much recently, but during the peak of quarantine and stuff, people were also home all day, just thumbing through their phone all day, every day. It's just all these things start adding up, and then you blink your eye, and we have an election in 6 weeks. It's just
which is wild.
it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And me and Soapy have talked about this on the podcast before, talking about, we've talked to some sports reporters and what that was like when the professional sports league shut down for a while back in March. Like, if you think back to like when the NBA first shut down in March, like the Rudy Gobert thing, I don't know about you, but to me, that seems like 5 years ago. Like this has just been such a wild like time frame. 2020 in general. And people think like, remember, this stuff really didn't start till like mid-March, early April, I think is when it got real. Like, hey, like this might be a bigger deal than we thought it was. There were still 2 or 3, almost 4 months of 2020 before that too. People forget Kobe Bryant died. People forget there's wildfires all over the earth. That stuff seems like 20 years ago, let alone stuff in March. So it's just been a lot of compounding things in a very small time frame. And I think that's kind of just, it hasn't been great, I don't think, for a lot. And then yet on top of that, all this there's a lot of talk about mental health stuff now and talking about that. This stuff's a big reason for it, I think. This certainly doesn't help.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, and you're right. I mean, that does feel like, I've been at home since, working from home since Rudy Gobert announced that. I said, okay, now, now the NBA is shutting down. I said, all right, I'll take my laptop and I'll work from home from now on.
Me too.
But it does seem like very long ago at this point. And some of the division stuff drives me crazy because you look at like 9/11, 9/11 happens, and we all, for that moment in time, came together, right? Now, do we have some of the people that were, showing Islamophobia at the time? Yes, but I really think they were a small part of what was going on. With COVID,
I didn't even mention the word COVID during that whole thing I was just talking about. Yeah.
And the division, even on, even if you don't think masks do anything, why can't you just do it to,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I've always said, I mean, we as in like my household, we are, and again, we're very lucky because I mean, I haven't had really no issues with my job outside of now I just work from home. No one in my family's been sick. No one in my immediate family, has had a small business shut down. I've been very fortunate in that scenario. Hopefully you have as well. But like we're a little more cautious than most people, and I think that's understandable. Like we have a 1-year-old at home. My wife works in healthcare. Our son is with her parents multiple days a week. They're obviously older, so so we, I think, understandably have to be a little more cautious. Now, if you're a single guy in New Hampshire living by yourself, working from home, it might not be as a big a priority. And I think what people understand is, I think that's okay. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be so black and white. Maybe that's not the right term to use. It doesn't have to be so, like one versus
the gray
the other.
area though.
Exactly. But again, it just goes back to what I was saying. Like, I don't think this would be as big of a divide without social media, because you wouldn't know what your other people are thinking or what they're doing. They're just doing what they're doing. And there would be no comment section on Facebook, and you wouldn't be able to slander people or, say what you're doing is messed up, what I'm doing is right, vice versa. And I also get it. I mean, I feel for a small business owner whose life might have just been virtually ended via the disease. And that must suck, working your life to have that small business. It gets shut down because mandates say you can't have this many people in there. They got to wear masks. And then you look at the numbers and you see the lower, and death rates and stuff like that. I get how frustrating that would be. But going online and complaining about wearing a mask for half an hour at Hannaford, that one I can't really jump on board with.
I have no sympathy for that. When we talk about the division on at least the COVID-19, I do think the president is a divider, and certainly. I think that he did fuel a lot of the fire on people arguing about masks and stuff like that, where he really didn't need to do that. What he needed to do was bring the country together and what we learned. And this is, and I'm sure Trump people will disagree, and we've had them on the show.
Oh, yeah.
He needed to bring the country together, and he chose not to.
And I think, and I agree with you, but I also think, and I'm sure anyone can attest and agree with this, I think that's easier for us to say than someone in office actually being the front man for this stuff. But I think at the root, it was just a missed opportunity, like you said, to really, it's an election year. I can really make a difference here. If we go all in on this thing, maybe we can beat this thing. Clearly hasn't happened. You know what I mean? It's getting better. But we talk about this on the show a lot too. One thing that still just blows my mind after everything we've been talking about for the past like half hour, everything going on this year, for some reason, there's still people that just think COVID, the protests, whatever, has an expiration date of 12/31/2020 for some reason. Like this is working on a calendar. It's not.
I hear that at the softball field.
Yeah.
Almost every night.
Can't wait till 2021. I'm sure as hell not looking forward to 2021. There's really no science backing the fact that 2021 is going to be much better. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't know. It's just there's a lot going. There's a lot of opportunities for division, probably more than ever. If we were just dealing with COVID, that would suck, but I think we could work through it. If we were just dealing with indifferences on social injustice, fine. If it was just another election year, we're used to that. It's everything in a very short period of time. And unlike any other time, everything is public and everything is immediate, which certainly doesn't help.
I definitely agree. Well, who do you think wins in November?
That's a good question. I think that can be very fluid. I mean, we talked about a debate tomorrow. So at this point, I don't know. I mean, without really going too much into my personal beliefs, as far as who do I think is going to win the election, I think right now, if I had to guess, I think Trump would win the election. And I also think tomorrow's debate is going to help that argument. I think one of those two guys is more equipped to win a debate than the other.
Well, will Trump actually debate, though? Because really, he didn't really debate Hillary. It was a spectacle.
I agree. And he won the election, though.
He did, because this is what always
he became the president.
Yeah, and I've had my takes on the show about the Electoral College for sure, so we won't even go there.
That's fine.
But he didn't really. I don't feel like he really ever debated Hillary. No. I think it's just like it's like she has a track record in politics and he didn't. So he could just go after that. And it didn't matter what he said. He interrupted her and everything else. I think him and Biden is just going to be this shit show between the two of them.
Great way to put it.
And I don't know if we really have a grip on who's going to win. There hasn't been campaigning like in previous years.
Well, how's the debate going to work?
I have no idea.
In a room together? No chance. Joe's not going in a room.
Right? I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see it. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'll probably have to watch.
I postponed for a while. It looks pretty set for tomorrow. No.
It's set for tomorrow. But usually, there's like three debates. I don't know if that's happening.
No, right. There's the prelim matches, and then the heavyweight title at the end.
So I don't know. I don't know if these debates are going to matter. I think, in my honest opinion, pretty much every American has probably made their decision on who they.
I think that's fair.
I don't think there's any swaying.
What else do you need to see? Like, what else do you need to see changed in a month?
I mean, I think it comes down to this: either you thought that Trump did a good job with COVID-19, or you think he didn't. Or you were like, you know what, the economy tanking wasn't his fault because it was of this, and we feel like he did good with the economy.
Right.
Other than that, what else can you really? It's who you like. It's just who you like better. It's just so our elections are ridiculous. I'd love to see some youth in there, but neither here nor there.
I remember it wasn't too long ago when people would joke about The Rock running for president.
Yeah,
doesn't sound that ridiculous anymore.
I think he could run the country better than what we've had.
It wouldn't be a joke anymore.
No.
It's sad that we're even having this conversation. But yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, my biggest thing is like so many people in this country, so many good people in this country, and it's like we're down to these two, and it's just I don't know. I think we can do better. I hope we do better in 4 years.
Yeah, we'll
But
have to
again,
see.
I don't know. I don't. It's not like I'm going to do it. So kind of just is what
I
it is. Part of
I
in America and
if
democracy.
if Biden does win, I'd like to see that he even give some kind of appointment to Andrew Yang, because I think Andrew Yang was somebody that was very overlooked.
Yeah.
If everybody's kind of focused on Bernie, and I'm thinking,
Mm.
looking back, I'm like, Andrew Yang's a young guy,
Yep.
and he's smart, and he's got a lot of good
Joe
points.
Biden's not a young.
No, no.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. We'll see.
Let's get to the fan questions. First question from Tom Ledoux, who I grew up in the same neighborhood as Ledoux brothers, and then
Great family.
also lived across from them in college as well, in the student apartments.
Oh, that's right.
We used to whip apples at their door.
Nice.
But I love the Ledouxs. They're great people. But Tom wants to know, why did it take Dan so long to conclude that The Sopranos is the greatest television show?
Mm-hmm.
You have a whole podcast series in a single question.
Yeah,
Tom,
right.
from Tom.
Which is true, and that's a good question. I mean, I think you're a big Sopranos guy too, from
Very
what I
big.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I never watched it when it was live on HBO. That's probably like it was like late 90s, early 2000s, right? When that really got going.
99 to 2007.
Okay. I remember one day, probably like I was either home for college break or high school summer or something, and my parents had all the DVD set, if you remember what DVDs are.
I still collect DVDs.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Not to be confused with VHS, who's one of our biggest sponsors on the Morse Code podcast. So
Still waiting on that delivery.
But anyway, so I remember I'm like, I heard this was a good show. Might as well check it out. Watched it, just crushed it in like a summer. And I was like, this show is outstanding. And then, television shows in general just kind of blew up from there. Now I think TV shows are bigger than movies at this point, as far as followings go. But I don't know. I mean, and again, I think he's basing this off a status I made the other day. I started kind of rewatching on HBO a little bit recently. What really got me back into it, I don't know if you checked this out, but there's a really good podcast. It's called Talking Sopranos. Do you follow that? With Christopher and Bobby Bacala? It's outstanding.
I've listened to a few. I think I listened to the one where they had oh my God.
They've had people. They've had
Dre D'Amato was on.
Yeah. Yep. And I think she has a show too, actually.
She does. And then AJ and Meadow have a show too.
Good call.
Yeah.
Yep. But no, what's great about the podcast is it actually kind of lined up. I started listening to it and I was like, I should go back and like watch the shows so I can it'll probably make the podcast more enjoyable. And I'd highly recommend that. If you watch an episode and then go back and listen to the podcast about that, it's really awesome. Like they walk through a lot of behind the scenes stuff you never heard. They break down some scenes from like a director's standpoint or writer's standpoint. And at that point I was kind of like, you know what, like I think at this point I'm still comfortable saying that's the greatest television series of all time. Tenure, acting, writing, how it's just held up for over almost 20 years at this point, more than 20 years at this point.
21. Yeah.
Yeah, big fan. Shout out Sopranos. If you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend checking it out. Just DM Soapy to get his HBO Max logins, and you can go right in.
See, I own all the DVDs, and
that's good. Like that's a lost. I miss those days because Netflix is just too convenient. Like I can have it on in the background, and if I lose focus, I miss a whole season. She's just playing all day. At least the DVD, you have to physically, after 6 episodes or so, take it out and go to the new one.
Go back.
I do that with The Office all the time. Like I put it on and then I come back like after I eat dinner. I'm like, oh shit, like I'm on like season 3, episode 6 after I just started like, the day before.
See, I don't have Netflix, and I've never been a video game person.
Yeah.
I don't like video games. I like Sega. I like sports talk baseball. So I never had an Xbox or anything, which is what most people watch a lot of Netflix on. So I have a TV that has a DVD player built into it.
That's That's OG. What do you think is like I think Sopranos is the greatest TV series of all time. What do you think's I've asked this before. I don't know if we type all this on the show. What do you think's like the most like easily like bingeable series of all time? Like a show you can just throw on in the background, throw on anytime. If it's on cable, you can just sit down and watch it from anywhere in the season.
I mean, I would probably say like, The Office falls into that.
That's mine. Seinfeld's
Seinfeld
good.
probably in
Office is
there.
my go-to.
For
Because
me,
after you've seen it, I think a couple times, I can pick up any episode on Comedy Central or something and just
yeah,
pick up and watch it. Or when in
it's
doubt, I can't find something on Netflix, I'll just put that on and just have it on in the background.
it's pretty timeless, and the jokes
Mhm.
are really funny. Me personally, like I've been rewatching Oz a lot. I bought
Got
the
into
set,
Oz.
and Oz is one of the. It's not talked about enough.
Yeah,
I don't think it
I
gets
bet
enough
I
credit.
know. It's like one of those shows I know I would like. I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet. There's
There's
a few
there's
shows like that on my list.
there's no Sopranos without Oz.
Really? Okay.
Oz was HBO's experimental, like we're gonna go with this cutting edge show,
Yeah.
and then they did The Sopranos, which was very similar,
Hmm.
and it's the rest is history. HBO does this all the time now.
Right.
But yeah,
Interesting.
no, love The Sopranos, absolutely my favorite show.
Great family.
Um, oh yeah, and
R.I.P. Jim Gandolfini.
yeah,
Great guy.
every year on the anniversary, I share a
Oh.
post for
Yeah.
him. I tell you, it's one of the worst news story days ever. I remember the news came on, and it was like Doc Rivers is leaving the Celtics. I go, what? Aaron Hernandez arrested for
Killed the
possible
guy.
murder.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
on the same segment, entertainment comes on. James Gandolfini died in Italy. I went,
That's tough.
whoa, this is the
What
worst
else?
day
What's
ever.
next?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like,
That's a
Jesus.
tough one. My goodness.
All right, now Soapy has a few questions. Your co-host.
Of course.
Um, what is your favorite memory of our living situation sophomore year? Does he think that my April Fool's prank on our pal was a move more than a prank? Was more than a prank.
Oh, I know
I'm
what
I
you're talking
can't
about.
read my own writing.
I'll just jump to that. Our living situation, living with Soapy, was interesting. Put it that way. As anyone who knows Soapy could probably attest to. This is actually an interesting point. I'd like to get your perspective. So it's April Fool's Day, 2012, 13, something like that. And it's college, dorm room, we're all on the same floor, whatever. So one of our friends, Dave, was he was in the stall. He must have been in the stall in the bathroom. And Soapy's like, hey, like, let's get Dave for April Fools. I'm like, okay, like, whatever. He's like, come on, let's do it. I'm like, are you going to tell me what we're going to do? He's like, no, shut up. Just come on. I'm like, all right, whatever. So he goes in the bathroom, and this is cell phone days. When you're in the stall, you're usually on your cell phone. He fills up a bucket of water, walks up to the toilet next to him, and just dumps it on him, like a la Karate Kid, right?
Yeah.
Dumps the water on him. Dave gets, pissed, understandably, like kicks the door open, chases him down. Just picture Soapy like running down the hallway back to our room, gets in, locks the door. They fight, whatever. And it actually caused an ongoing conversation between the two of us. Like, where does the line for like an April Fool's Day prank end? And then just like a douchebag move begin or like a violent act begin. Because when
Yeah.
I think April Fools, I think like, I don't know, what are some of the classics? Like switching out your donuts for vegetables, or I don't know. Hey, I'm pregnant. No, just kidding. But like,
Yeah.
something like that. Usually there's no property damage involved. There's no, I don't really have to change my clothes, things like that. So, I don't know. I thought it was right on the borderline inappropriate for April Fools. That's pretty much the story.
I mean, if you don't, if you don't wreck the cell phone, it's just water.
That's a big, yeah,
And it
that's a big
dries.
X factor. Yep.
Um, I
Like I said,
mean,
this was almost 10 years ago. This is when cell phones were, you don't have your cell phone's out of commission. You're kind of screwed for quite some time, especially in college. You got to have your parents come pick you up and go to Verizon and get a new phone. It's a weekend. It's a big deal. It's like a real thing.
that would piss me off. The water, I'd probably be like, all right, I'd get him back. I
I
mean,
think, yeah, I don't remember what he did. He must have. I hope he did.
I
But
got
yeah,
some. I mean, Scott McVicker was one of my college roommates.
mhm. Classic.
Later in college,
Mhm.
and at the time, I didn't. These were still flip phone days,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
he figured out a way online to make a message appear in your phone and just come up with the name, right?
Hmm.
And Scott started sending me these messages pretending to be my ex-girlfriend,
Mm.
which was I
That's
was like,
another one.
oh.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking, so me and her had already had some drama, not drama, but like,
You
Are we gonna
broke
get
up for
back?
some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get back together? We're not. And then I finally like
Oh,
was like, I don't want to get back together with you. And so I'm getting these messages from her that are like crazy. Like just
yeah.
and she had already like started to be a little bit crazy, right?
Uh-huh.
Because
Yeah.
things weren't going the way she wanted. And but they were popping up just as Amy. I was like, oh, that's weird. Like it doesn't say the phone number, but I think she's sending these from her computer.
Yep.
And Scott, being the a-hole that he is,
Hmm.
he's just keeps going with this, but he knows what my reactions are because we're talking about it.
Right.
Get to the point, I go, Jesus Christ, and I walk out of the room. I'm like, I gotta call her. I gotta call her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So is
And
he like in the room with you, like while he's sending these
yeah,
messages?
so he's like,
Oh,
well, no. He goes, he starts banging on the door. He goes, dude, it's me.
yeah,
Don't call her.
yeah.
So I got her on the phone. I'm like, what's going on with you? And she's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Oh,
Scott's
man.
out there, and I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
That was like, I was like, why would you do that?
Yeah. No, I think anytime you bring in either an ex or like family or a boss,
Yeah,
that's where it gets lines are getting blurred.
yeah.
Like I remember in college we used to play this game. I think it was called text roulette. I don't know if this expanded outside of UNH, but I forget the real exact rules. But it was some sort of like it was all luck of the draw. It was like a card game. Whoever gets the lowest number loses. And the winner gets to pick a text message, like says whatever it wants. You scroll through your phone, like stop on a name, and you have to send that text message to that
Oh,
person,
geez.
like no matter what. And that could get rather dangerous, if it's like I think gentlemen's rules were like no bosses, no exes, like nothing like that. But I don't know. I didn't even think April Fools even happen this year? I don't think you can do April Fools in 2020.
I think
It's
no
not
one
funny.
wanted any part of
No,
that,
no. Let's take a
Um,
year off.
Soapy also asked one other question.
Hmm.
What is the hottest takes he believes in? I'm assuming
Oh.
sports takes.
No, I saw this earlier, so that's actually hilarious. So I've had a few that I've kind of stuck by, for quite some time. I think you'd appreciate at least two out of the three. The first one, speaking of HBO television series, I guess I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on the show The Wire?
Can't get through it.
Okay.
I
Wow, I
I
was wrong.
have the first season,
Hmm.
and I watched the first two episodes and was like, I don't get the hype.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying I'm giving up on this. I
Okay.
will do it again, but the thing is, like Sopranos and Oz, they
One
punched you right in the face from
hundred
the get
percent.
go.
100%.
This show does not do that.
Couldn't agree more. Surprisingly, couldn't agree more. So I mean, like I said, it's a hot take. If you know other people who watch the show and follow television, there's people who swear by The Wire. And if you say anything outside of this isn't the greatest show of all time, the best written show, anything, it's considered like blasphemous. And my take is I've seen it from beginning to end, and I simply think it's a pretty good show. And I've been crucified for for saying that like on a public platform before. Because like I said, some people just swear by the show and like you said, it's just too slow. Like it's an insult to say, like I get it. Some shows, Office is a great example. Some shows kind of start out a little slow. If you just watch The Office season 1, that is nowhere near indicative of what that show is like. You know what I mean? And how it goes.
Not at all.
I don't think The Wire gets good to like mid to late season 3. You're asking a lot of my time to dedicate 2.5 seasons just to get to a point where it's good. Like, nah, man, that's a slap. That's an insult. Like, I have better things to do with my time. You can't set up a show like that. So, okay, interesting. So that's one. The other one is I think Cool Blue Gatorade is unquestionably the worst Gatorade flavor of all time,
Really?
and that's a big fan favorite from what I've
Yeah.
seen. I
Yeah.
think it's unequivocal. I don't get the hype. I don't like it. It's not even a real flavor. Certainly not a real color. That's not blue. That's a different. That is not on the rainbow. I don't like it. What else? And the other one was more of a music take, but there's a lot of people who swear by the rapper J. Cole. I think he's the greatest rapper alive, great lyricist, this and that. I think J. Cole is an outstanding rapper. I just think he doesn't make good music. So take that how you want it. And then my last one is actually, it's more of a conspiracy theory / hot take. I think, since the new seltzers came out, like alcoholic seltzers, White Claw, Truly, I think it's a bigger I think it's a bigger thing than we think. I think all seltzers are the same. They're just packaging them in different companies and brands now so everyone can get a taste of it. I would guarantee if you took a black cherry seltzer from White Claw, Truly, Bud Light, Corona, everybody makes one now. Coors Light makes seltzers now,
Oh, it's
and put them in
ridiculous.
front of someone, you would never know the difference. I think they're all just there's an Illuminati going on in the seltzer industry. I think it's about time someone cracks it.
I'm still
Heard
with
it
the
here
White
first.
Claws. I will
I'm
say
actually a
this.
Truly guy. I've gone over to the Trulies.
Some of the Trulies are a little too sweet for me, but the one that was the worst
Oh,
was
I like them.
the Smirnoff no sugar
Oh, I
ones
haven't
were
tried that.
terrible,
That sounds
absolutely
like a bad
terrible.
idea.
Um, but
No, that's it.
I also want to know. Soapy talked a lot about this canoe story, and I
Mhm.
know you have a take on that.
Yeah, I'm
He
glad you
said
asked. Oh,
he's
it's not a take. It's just a true story of what
he
happened.
said you were
That's all.
pretty furious with him during
So,
this.
all right. So I'm glad you asked. And I hope like some of the people who were on that trip are listening who can attest to this. I think Soapy did an okay job of telling that story. I think he left a lot of major plot points out of it. So he did a decent job of painting the picture. So it's a typical like Saco, you're there for the weekend, Friday through Sunday. So what you pack on Friday, you can't just stop and go to the store like at Walmart on Saturday. Like what you have is what you have. So me and him were canoe partners and we packed pretty well, food, sleeping bags, everything. The way he told it, he made it sound like we started a little later in the day, like 4 or 5 we got on the water. We started at like 8 in the morning. Like we got there very early. And so we're all going down the river. We have everything in the canoe. I think I'm a bigger guy than Soapy. I'm a little stronger. So he hopped out. I kind of manned the canoe for a little bit. And like he told the story, he jumped out. He tried to get back in. And I don't know if he just doesn't understand physics or basic, things, but he didn't try to get in the canoe. He jumped up on the back, pushed the back down to propel his weight up. Obviously that's going to throw things off a little bit, the balance I was working. Flips the canoe. So not only does the canoe flip over and all our things are ruined, basically. No food. We were able to snag some beers because they were in cans and they were floating. Cell phone, toothbrush, sleeping bag. My first instinct is to gather as much stuff as we can so maybe we can dry it off. This is the part Soapy left out. He was hysterically laughing in the background, just like floating down the river like this wasn't a big deal. So I'm grabbing my things. I'm also grabbing Soapy's things because I'm just a decent person. And then by the time we finally get back either in the canoe or like on the side to start walking and dragging it, I think he just had this, theme throughout the weekend. Like, dude, like it wasn't that bad. Like, stop making a big deal out of this.
Oh God.
It's like, all right, bro. Like, you weigh 100 pounds. Like, wait till tonight. like when we don't have any warm clothes to wear and sleeping bags. And I think that's where it got real. But looking back, it was pretty funny because, like he said, there are pictures literally of the canoe flipped, like my pillow literally soaked and floating away. And then like for the next mile, we'd find a random like Bud Light can or two just kind of catching up to us.
Oh
That
man.
fell on the way back. And other part he forgot to mention was I don't know how he got roped into this, but we ended up pulling Caitlin Cleary's canoe as well. So now I'm rowing 2 canoes, pissed off, just trying to get to the land so I can kind of sort everything out and see what's worth saving. But it certainly wasn't a great start to the weekend. And it's all, I hate to throw people under the bus, but it's certainly like 90-10 Soapy's fault versus mine. I think we need to rethink our proportions. It raises a good lesson though, like about choosing your partner for Saco. You have to consider proportions between people. Like I was 6'3", 215 pounds. Soapy's like 5'8", 100 pounds. So
Oh man.
that was probably doomed from the get-go, but is what it is. Made for a funny story.
Well, we got both takes. We got both takes now. So it's gonna take us into sports. Celtics are done. Kind of a bummer. I really thought that they were going to the finals.
Yep, you would think that. I did too. Tough series because going into that series, as soon as Giannis got knocked out, the Bucks got out, I said, okay, finally, like I think we're going to catch a break and I think we can not cruise through the Eastern Conference Finals, but we can get out of here in 5 or 6 games. Win in 5 or 6 games. But, I've been saying this the whole time, ever since the bubble kind of kicked off. in it, I totally believe it now. The Heat are a good team. I mean, the Heat are they're a legit good team. They're better than a 5 seed. They have an alpha like Jimmy Butler, and they're surrounded by killers, surrounded by shooters, just white boys who can just kill at all times. Like Tyler Hero's coming alive. That kid Duncan Robinson he's from York, Maine. He played ball in New Hampshire. He's a dog. Bam Adebayo is playing out of his mind. I think it's going to be a great matchup with Anthony Davis. They just were the Heat were 100 times more mentally tough than Boston during that series. I think that's really what it came down to. I think Brad Stevens got outcoached the entire series. I mean, I remember last night's game. I literally got up. They were up 6 with like maybe 8 minutes left, 6 minutes, something like that. I got up to let my dog out, and I came back, and we were down like 4. And then it was just a onslaught from there. But I don't know. It sounds cliche, but I do think they're one piece away. That's like, the cliche thing to say after any like early departure. But I think they need a big man. I think they're going to move Hayward. I would be okay with that. He has an option. I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm okay if we keep Tatum, Brown. I'd like to keep Kemba, but I understand if someone sees him as value and they move him. But the other thing is, dude, the East is only going to get tougher next year. KD and Kyrie, the Nets could very well be the 1 or 2 seed next year. Somebody's got to go. So it's either going to be someone like, and don't forget the Nets were in the playoffs this year. So literally they're not making up for another team. They're just moving up in the rankings. Golden State's going to be back next year. LeBron, if LeBron wins this year, which I think he will, I think it's going to become real that I might be able to get 6. But if I do that, I literally can't waste the season. So no, I think it's setting up for a really fun 2021 season. But as far as Celtics go, just I think it's a good thing when you can say losing in the Eastern Conference Finals is a disappointment. You know what I mean? But it's still a disappointment. It still sucks.
Well, Doc Rivers is now available. I'm not sure where he's going, but he left the Clippers, and as he probably should have. That team should have been in the finals of the West.
I would not. I would want nothing to do with that organization. That I think that franchise is legit cursed. Like you talk about like the legend of Bambino and stuff like that. Like any organization sharing a building with the Lakers, you just gotta like burn it down and start over. Which I think they're doing. I think they're building an arena, but until then, it's like, no, I want nothing to do with that team.
They're in the shadow.
You think he might go to Boston? You think they would move Brad?
I don't know. We were talking about this in a group chat. I said Doc Rivers is available. Are the rumors going to start? I don't think Brad Stevens is a start.
Sure.
They haven't started. I was just trying to blow smoke. So, I like Brad Stevens, but I was hoping he could get that team there, but
he's got to toughen up a little.
But who's to say that Doc would really, no. That's not the group that he coached.
I don't think Doc's the answer. Nah, you're right. He needs those veteran dogs like KG and Pierce and someone like Ray who's just a pro's pro. A lot of people kind of give Ray slack for leaving, but when he was in Boston, he was the epitome of a professional. Shows up, kills you for 40 minutes, and then just moves on. So I don't know. I mean, plus I think Brad's still under contract too, so it's not as simple. It's just like we're not renewing your contract. You have to fire him, pay him, and then pay Doc. So I don't know. Like I said, I think they're a piece away. I think if they might make a move. I'd like to make a move for doesn't have to be an all-star big man, but a mid-tier guy like a Clint Capella or something like that. People are already throwing about rumors about bringing Horford back. I don't think that's the answer, but I don't know, man. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, if this is their peak this year, it's certainly not going to be any easier next year. Because, like I said, I don't think Giannis is going out like he did this year. KD's back. Then you get to the finals, and you have a even hungrier LeBron and an even better Anthony Davis. It's tough.
Yeah, it's gonna be. See, I'm a LeBron fan, but I don't want to see LeBron win with the Lakers. So I'm very torn going into that. The Lakers will be tied with the Celtics if they win this.
Yeah, right. But I mean, those can always go back and forth. LeBron's going to retire eventually. I think LeBron's too good and too of an all-time talent to just be stuck with that narrative of not winning more rings. He'll get at least one, I think, this year. I think, like I said, if he wins this year, I don't think it's unrealistic for him to get 6. You know what I mean? With that team, with him still, I think, close to, if not at his prime. 2 more, I don't think that's crazy. So
Well,
if he can finish with 6 rings, now it's a conversation. Now it's infinitely harder to have,
well,
him not in the GOAT top.
we'll put it this way too. LeBron came into the league younger than Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to leave the league older than Jordan.
100%.
Jordan retiring in '98 was kind of like, just to take away the other 2 seasons that he didn't play in, or
Right.
1.5 or whatever it was.
Yep.
I think Jordan should have jumped. I understand the Bulls were coming to an end, but
Mm-hmm.
instead of, I don't, how old was he? 33, 34 when he retired?
Like you said, he was younger than LeBron when he retired from the
Yeah.
Wizards.
Well,
So at that point,
he retired from the Bulls, and he wasn't that old. And then he
right.
came back for the Wizards I think at like 38 or something like
That
that.
old? Damn, I don't
I
remember.
believe
Maybe.
I
But
have
still,
to look
that
that up.
shouldn't even count. Yeah, I know what you
But
mean.
but he could have gone somewhere in that 99 season. He could have been somewhere in the 2000 season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I
I think
think
they would have won if he stayed in Chicago. I think they
yeah.
would have won one more. Like the way like The Last Dance was filmed and stuff, they made it seem like that 98 championship was like their absolute peak, like one string left to get a title. Nah, they there was some more meat on that bone, I think. They would have at least been in the finals the next year.
Well, the management there kind of blew it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it wasn't Mike's
You know,
fault. He said he wanted to come. He said if Phil came back, I'm coming back. If Phil's not coming back, I'm leaving. So you make the decision, and they cut Phil. So
and the craziest thing, just and we'll just want to touch on one last thing
yeah,
here. You look at because people are like, well, they're trying to compare the Brady and Belichick breakup. I said
yep,
they did that for 20 years, 19,
yeah,
but you will round
yeah.
up.
20 years.
You can't. There's no comparing the two. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's the same thing. Brady might win another, but he's also 43 years old.
Yeah, dude, try working for the
Yeah,
same boss for 20 years. Normal people don't
yeah.
do that. Like it's
No.
it's crazy.
Are you happy with Cam so far? Cam Newton?
Yeah, I think he's performed better than I expected. Um and I think that's saying a lot because I think this is one of the more unique off seasons ever. This system, all people do is talk about the Patriot system, Patriot system. It's hard enough to pick up in general. Now you're asking a guy to pick it up who basically missed half a year, who's playing for next to nothing, who has no OTAs, no preseason, a very different training camp. And I think he's looked, considering all those things, I think he's looked outstanding. I mean, he's by far the best skill player on the Patriots offense. It's not even close. Because, we talked on the show before, even with Brady there last year, the Patriots offense is not sexy whatsoever. Like it
No.
stinks. You know what I mean? Like they're getting big games out of guys like Rex Burkhead, and even Julian Edelman right now is not Julian Edelman. They're a system built on 2 tight ends. They have 0. They're asking the world of this guy, and I think he's doing well. And I'm actually more impressed with Cam off the field. That was the big question mark. What the hell is this guy going to say? I think if people stop fixated so much on what Cam's wearing at his press conferences and actually listen to what he says, it's night and day from Brady. Like his press conference last night, if you saw it, was great. He's praising guys like N'Keal Harry. He's getting people involved. That's what this team needs. They need a true leader who makes people feel good about themselves. It's kind of a knock on Brady, but you don't need to shun N'Keal Harry when he drops a pass or isn't where Julian Edelman is on a route, who's been doing that for the last 10 years. So I feel good about Cam. I feel good about this offense. There's still a lot of good teams they have to play. So we'll see.
What do we got? The Chiefs coming up, I think.
Chiefs next week, man. You got Chiefs. Still got they already played Seattle, but even you play Buffalo twice. You got to play Miami again. I think going into the season, I thought 10-6 was kind of a good ceiling, which I think at this point is attainable. I think 10-6, 9-7 would be a good year. Get in the playoffs, and then anything can happen.
Hey, if they knock off Kansas City, I'm going to be like, okay.
That's a big test. I thought Oakland was going to be a big test, and they smoked them. So we'll see.
What's your all-time favorite sports moment?
That's a good question. I know you asked Soapy that last time. I think pretty similar to what you guys were talking about. I think the championships obviously are probably the main ones. 04 Red Sox was different just because we got a taste of it with the Patriots. And then I think once the Red Sox kind of got over that hump, It's like, okay, now we have a couple of good teams who are winning championships. Then the Celtics and Bruins got good, and it's kind of was the start to that. So I remember that. Falcons Super Bowl, obviously. One I really remember that I liked, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I think one of the funnest games was the Raiders snow game.
Oh
That
God,
was
yeah.
a blast because we still didn't know what this team was. This was still a kid playing quarterback. That was just a blast to watch because that was like what, 01, like 2000, 2001. So I was like 10 or
2001
11.
series, 2002
Because I
playoffs.
remember I really first started watching football during the Rams Titans Super Bowl the year before.
Yep.
Um, so that was like the first season I was all in. 2 games in, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, great. And then
Yeah.
that whole season was such a fun ride. I definitely remember that game more than the Super Bowl, to be honest with you, because that was just crazy. But no, we're lucky enough to we're literally picking and choosing which championship we like the best, which is really kind of not everyone really has that opportunity. So no, there's been plenty to choose from.
That 2001 season was unreal because
Mhm.
at the time I was probably about 17, and
Mhm.
I'd always watched football, but not religiously.
Mhm.
It's changed so much with HD and
Oh
everything.
God,
But
yeah,
But
yeah,
when I was a kid, I was always mainly, a baseball guy. I'd watch a lot of baseball, but I'd
yep,
watch football here and there. Then I fractured my ankle
Mhm.
in a pickup game when I was 17, and I was laid up
yeah,
for months.
yeah.
And I was like, I'm like, who is this kid Brady?
Right.
Like,
Seriously, he's actually doing
because
pretty well.
and then I ended up watching every game because I was always at home.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, very unreal.
I will
What
say
happened
this
there?
too. Outside of, because I know you guys mostly talked about outside, like just New England sports. Outside of New England sports, there's always two that I always remember. One is a bigger time frame, but one was just Ichiro's rookie year in general. That was
Yep.
must-watch television. When Ichiro's rookie year was holy shit. Like, what is this guy going to do on a nightly basis? You mentioned you're a LeBron guy. The other one that's always stuck out to me was the Pistons playoff game where we just rattled off like 28 points in a row to end the fourth quarter and go into
Got
overtime.
it.
That was when I was like, okay, like this isn't just like the Sports Illustrated hype anymore. Like this kid's the real deal. I remember that game vividly as well, but lot to choose from. That's a tough question, Dan. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, if I have one, I guess two outside New England, it's 92 ALCS because when Sid Bream got the hit to knock in Francisco Cabrera against the
Yeah.
Pirates, because if you remember back in the day, you could watch the Braves more than you could watch the Red Sox because they're on
TNT.
TV,
Yes, sir. TBS
TBS,
rather. Excuse me. Yep.
and you'd have to pay for NESN and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
that's
we,
right. Forgot about
when we
that.
were kids, we loved the Braves,
Good call.
and
Yep.
so that was one. That was my favorites.
I
All
forgot
right, we'll
about
go in.
Nesson was subscriber based. I remember we used to go to
Oh
my
yeah,
grandmother's every now and then. They had Nesson. It's like yes, because that
they
would have made Fox so much better, which is McDonough and Remy and stuff. I didn't know
yeah.
anything about the Nesson broadcast.
And they would always have these pitches that'd be like, "No one gives you the Bruins like we do," and I think the song would start off. It was like it was a parody, but it would go
Yeah.
Momo, 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 and there'd just be
Yep.
Mo Vaughn hitting
Yep.
stuff. So I'm glad that it's not like that anymore.
Thank goodness.
Pop culture. You're a wrestling fan. Not.
Indeed.
What are some of your favorite moments in professional wrestling?
I'm trying to think. I remember one of my first real moments was WrestleMania 9. Was WrestleMania 9 the one outside at Caesar's
Yep.
Palace?
Yep.
That was like what, like mid 90s?
93.
93. That was the first. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and I remember it because if you remember back in the day, that was all obviously on pay-per-view.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully the feds aren't listening, but my dad had like one of the black boxes he was able to get, and we got the pay-per-view for free, right? And I was just used to watching like I didn't even know did they even have Raw back then? Like what was like
Yeah,
non
Raw had just debuted in like
Okay.
January of that year.
So I remember my only exposure was like, the cable shows and the magazines, but watching that actual pay-per-view like 3-hour WrestleMania was like, okay, like this is the real deal. That was cool. That was one of my first real memories when I first really peaked, and I've always been more of like an Attitude Era guy. WrestleMania 14 is always one that stands out to me where it's like, okay, now I'm all in. There's no more for me. There's no more not as much WCW back and forth. Like it was Tyson, it was Austin, it was Kane and Undertaker for one of the first real times. It was in Boston too.
I wish I begged my parents to get tickets to that.
Me
I
too,
definitely
man.
did not.
But yeah, I remember that. And then I think Mankind Taker, Hell in a Cell is always going to be up there. One of my favorite, and we could do another episode and talk about just ridiculous storylines for hours. But one of my favorite storylines was the Y2J reveal. You know, like who it is who's coming. That was awesome because I don't know if you remember like what your thoughts were at the time. That was one of the last guys on my mind I pictured because at the time he wasn't a huge WCW name, right? He was like a heavyweight champ or anything.
He was a guy that. So I've always been a dirt sheet. I'm such a hardcore wrestling fan. I knew Jericho was debuting that night.
Did you? So like that's a good point because like it wasn't leaked on Twitter. Like what
No, there was the dirt sheets like the spear.com. Maybe that's when No DQ was actually coming. But you could find out a lot of wrestling rumors. Right. So I knew Jericho was coming. I knew when Big Show was coming. But the thing with Jericho was what I remember, I didn't see his ECW stuff, but I religiously watched WCW Saturday night, and I'd see him on there. But he was Lionheart Chris Jericho, and he was this very bland babyface.
Yes, for sure.
And then they let him start talking. And then that's when I was like, okay, he's calling out Goldberg. He tells Dean Malenko, I'm the man of 1,001 holds, like all this great stuff. But the ceiling in WCW was the big names that were getting paid were going to be in the main event. And WWF saw that, he was going to be something. It didn't work out for him right away. The big reveal was great.
Yeah.
And then it's slowly kind of like.
I was going to say, because, he was more of like and again, I really didn't watch much like mid 2000s. I kind of picked it up again recently, the last like few years, not so much recently, but like Attitude Era, early 2000s, he kind of topped out as like an IC title guy, right? Was he ever in like the championship?
Well, the cool thing was on Raw when he knocked off Triple H and then they reversed the decision. I remember popping for that.
I remember having an IC title match against China. Right?
Yeah, and he lost. And he lost at Survivor Series. And then at one point they became the co-champion of the Intercontinental title. But he won the title at the end of 2001 after the invasion was sort of dying down. Okay. His big claim to fame for years later was I beat Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in the same night. They had a title tournament. But Jericho, I would say he's, looking at it, for me, I always say that, the greatest is the biggest draw, which is probably Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
But no one has recreated themselves more than Chris Jericho and made himself relevant. What he's doing in AEW, what he's done in AEW and New Japan post.
Yeah, I've kind of kept up with that a little bit. I've seen that. What the hell was I going to say? The other big one that always sticks out to me was Survivor Series 98. Was that the Deadly Games tournament?
Yep.
That was a phenomenal pay-per-view. That was up there for me. That was great. And then, like I said, I really peaked. Like I like the Golden Era and stuff like that, and we've talked about this on the show before too. We've had some people on Talk Wrestling. I think a lot of it has to do with your age and like, when at 98, 99, I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. So that, if I was like 40 years old when that came out, it wouldn't mean anything to me. If I was 3, it wouldn't mean anything to me. I think I was like right in that sweet spot where it's like, it was on late at night. I was like, I probably shouldn't be watching, Sable like Flash or like all this other stuff, but this is really cool. And there was nothing better than Tuesday mornings at school, like after a night of Raw. Like that'll never happen again.
It was the peak of wrestling at the time.
Yeah.
It was the complete perfect storm, as I would put it, because what happened was WCW would decide we're going to spend some money, and they started bringing all these big names. They brought in the Hogans, and to be honest, though, the Southern audience hated Hulk Hogan. They were not fans of the red and the yellow. So what do? Turn him heel. Something no one ever thought they would ever see. The NWO starts taking off. Then WWF starts going, oh shit,
Yep.
we're losing the ratings. This was our night of the
It's not
week,
good. Yeah.
So
I've always, speaking of hot takes, I'm one of the few people who I think I like Hollywood Hogan more than like early 90s like Hulk Hogan. I loved that Hollywood Hogan character because it was so different. It was like when, like peak NWO, like the having Rodman and the like somewhat OG NWO, not just like the handful of guys. Eventually got a little over the top. Like fuck, everybody was
everybody
either
wanted to be in it.
Wolfpack or NWO.
Yeah.
That Hogan, like 97, 98, maybe early 99, big fan. I thought he was a very well developed character, and I really clung on. Because, dude, eventually they get so old. It's like, he's not gonna make his name in the ring. Like, you've got to promote this guy and just have him kill on the mic, do something different. And I think he did. Like, I remember specifically, I think it was Halloween Havoc '98, him and Warrior, like one of the bigger overhyped matches ever.
It botched.
Absolute stinker, the firecrackers or whatever it was.
If their timing was any more off.
Oh my goodness.
And Hogan says that he said yeah the fire idea was mine. I blew it.
Eventually you get too old. Like I love Taker, but even Taker after the last few years, it's like, dude, like this guy's gonna die. Like he can't keep doing this stuff. Did you see the Taker doc, The Last Ride?
I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing. I mean, he isn't. I think it affects different people different ways though, because Jericho's 50 now. I think Undertaker's about 50.
Still like in the ring wrestling.
Jericho was just the champion in AEW, and he can still really go. He's putting people over, and but I think he knows his limitations. Mm-hmm. Taker was still doing some crazy stuff into his late 40s, but he'd only have to wrestle like 5 times a year. So, I don't know. I've a big fan of the Undertaker, and
of course, me too.
I wish he could have just decided how he really wanted to go out, and he just really. A lot of them do that though.
Do you think ending the streak storyline was worth it?
It was shocking. I did not see it coming. I knew Brock was a big draw, but the streak was the streak. No one ever really beat it. I think it propelled Brock Lesnar. Mm-hmm. But it made the next couple of years of The Undertaker very disappointing at WrestleMania.
I agree. I think it would be different if he just retired after that. The fact that he came back and just kept going back to WrestleMania, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, do one or the other. Like, let this guy retire undefeated or let him lose, go off. That's fine. It's just, I don't know. I just thought it was. And again, that happened when I kind of just got back into it. So it's like, holy shit, like I'm back and now you hit me with this sledgehammer to the nuts. It's like, what else are you going to do?
The streak was one of those things where all of a sudden, I think it was like 2005, they realized The Undertaker never lost at WrestleMania.
Great point. Because I was going to say, it's not like day one. They're like, let's get this guy a huge streak.
Yeah.
Have you guys noticed he's won the last like 20 years?
Always won. I mean, some of the matches he had were stupid. Like when Nathan... it was A-Train and that other guy who didn't pan out at all, and I can't think of his name. Like, that match was stupid. But in 2005, they're building Randy Orton to be like one of the next big stars. Him, John Cena, Batista. Yeah. So what can you do to make this Undertaker match bigger? Yeah. Oh, he's never lost. Oh, he has a streak going. I'm gonna kill his streak, and then they ran with it for about 9 more years. So. All right. Well, I had The Rock made an endorsement for Joe Biden. Kind of cool. He's also giving a shout out to Ken Shamrock. Just sticking with that kind of wrestling. The Rock seems like a genuine dude.
I would say so. Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't have much to comment on the Joe Biden endorsement. Kind of is what it is. I thought the Ken Shamrock thing was cool because I did like that. That was one of my favorite rivalries back in like peak Attitude Era. That was a good one.
And there was a lot of people on the wrestling pages going like, The Rock would never do anything for Impact Wrestling, and I'm like, what? Why? What does he have to lose? Nothing.
Is that what Ken Shamrock said now?
Ken Shamrock is going into the Impact Hall of Fame. Not sure why WWE never brought him back. He must have left on something, or Vince doesn't like him. If you think Ken Shamrock's run in WWF was not very long.
Right. Yeah, good point. Like late 90s, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I think by 97.
He was an animal, dude. He was like between like characters and real guy. think that guy was a psycho in real life too.
And he's still going. He's still
Yeah.
going, and he's well into his 50s. So,
Damn. Yeah, that's cool to see.
do you have a top 5 favorite albums?
Yeah. So I know you. Sounds like you probably ask everyone that. I think those questions are pretty hard. I think 5 per genre is hard enough. I kind of tried to kind of spread it out a little bit. So for me, in no particular order, I'd go Graduation, Kanye West, Get Rich or Die Trying, Enema of the State, Blink 182, Black Album. I think it's one of the best produced albums of all time. And then 5th was kind of a tie because I wanted to throw in either Hybrid Theory or Meteora. I'm a big Linkin Park fan. But I also didn't want to discredit Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy as well, because I think that's I think that and Black Album are probably the 2 best produced albums of all time. So that's probably my top 5 or 6, whatever it came out to be.
Nice. And do you have a top 5 favorite movies?
An even more absurd, hard question to break down. So I kind of went like I like all the good like I like Godfather and Goodfellas and the movies that are good movies. So I kind of just spitballed some more miscellaneous ones I've been watching lately. The first one is Spotlight. It's on Netflix. It's about like the Boston Globe blowing up, like the scandal story. Phenomenal movie. Michael Keaton. Social Network, like the Facebook movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. American Pie 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. Friday Night Lights, the movie, not the show. I think Friday Night Lights, the movie, is one of the best, the best, if not one of the better sports movies of all time. And then I said the movie Snatch with like Brad Pitt and some of those guys. Another phenomenal, more low-key movie, or underappreciated movie. But top 5 movies is crazy. That's
it's not easy. I do love American Pie too. I like
good.
That was like the last. The first one was great.
Yep.
Second one, because it kind of reminds you, obviously it was younger when it came out, but it reminds you.
It's kind of like we're talking about the Attitude Era. It's like it's lined up perfectly. Like if I was a 50-year-old guy when that came out, I can't go see that shit. But like if you're like a teenager or like younger than that, it's like, oh, this is what high school is gonna be like. Awesome. Yeah. So.
Well, and I still I'll watch that movie and be like, man, I remember like high school with my buddies and doing stupid stuff, and I was right in that time period. I was 2001. I was a sophomore. So. I love the American Pie movies. American Wedding
Great franchise.
became more of the Stifler movie, but it was something different. I liked it. And then they did a reunion movie where they brought people, which was kind of funny. Well, Kevin Kline and what's her name, Tara Reid, thought they were going to be bigger stars. That I don't need to do the American Pie movies anymore. Is what happened. And their careers didn't really go anywhere, so they were back for that reunion movie. So
that's a really good point. They weren't an American Wedding. Is that what you mean?
No.
Yeah, good point.
No, and there was no explanation for it either.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're doing this movie. We're going to pretend like these characters never existed. And that was it. So.
God, the turntables have turned.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll take this into my favorite segment on the show, blank versus blank. I'm going to give you 2 things, 2 people, 2 anything. You got to pick one and say why. Now, we both talked about these 2 shows quite a bit tonight, so we really got to get your answer on them. I know they're 2 different genres, but The Office or Sopranos?
Sopranos. It's a better show.
I'll agree. I can rewatch The Office, but I love rewatching.
Sopranos is a better television show. Like, come on. Yeah. The Office is just great for every other reason.
Sopranos is like a movie every week.
Yeah.
An hour
100%.
movie.
Well said.
The Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan?
Like I alluded to, I would say Hollywood Hogan specifically. And I liked Ultimate Warrior. I think his run was just a little too short. Didn't quite have the tenure for me.
Partly his own fault.
Certainly partly his own fault.
It pretty much was his own fault. Still one of my favorites. But more responsible for the success of the New England Patriots, Tom Brady or Bill Belichick?
Bill Belichick. I think we're learning that day by day in 2020.
Yeah, I ask that question pretty much every week, and most people have taken Belichick.
Well, I mean, success for the New England Patriots, you have to go Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Like, as much as people say, as much as Brady haters want to say system quarterback, he's somewhat of a system quarterback. Like, the system works. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put anyone in there, but the system helps, and that's I think Belichick and Charlie Weiss and Josh McDaniels have certainly had their hand in that system. So I think overall, I would say Belichick.
And the fact that he's been like the GM of the team as well. I mean,
He does everything. He coaches every position. Yeah.
So, Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
As of this second, Michael Jordan. But LeBron is closer, I think, than a lot of people think. I think it's like I will say confidently they're 1 and 2. Like that's not even a question anymore. And I think it's getting closer and closer. If LeBron gets 4 or 5 rings, I could see that. I think in a vacuum, I think LeBron James is a better basketball player. He's the best basketball player I've ever seen in my life. I just think there's so much more mystique to Michael Jordan that kind of puts him in that GOAT for right now.
Okay. My 2 favorite television characters, kind of taking it back to the first question. Michael Scott or Tony Soprano. Very different, but
extremely
different. 2 of my 2, those are 1 and 2 for my favorite TV characters.
I can never not give props to Michael Scott, no matter what the scenario is. I'm going to go Michael Scott. We actually had an episode about like the perfect TV character. Michael Scott is just, he makes every scene better. Every character can work with him. He can do serious, slapstick, whatever. No disrespect to Tony Soprano, but I'm going to go Michael Scott because I know he's listening, so I don't want to do
that. There was definitely, the show was not the same. I mean, you still had some funny stuff, but you realize when he left how he was the glue.
I've said before, you're a baseball fan and talk about stats. Michael Scott has the greatest WAR of all time, wins above replacement. That show, I don't remember a show more night and day with one character leaving than The Office. And I liked it. I think season 8 and 9 were good, but it's like this isn't The Office anymore. This is this is just a different show.
No, Michael he kept Scott. It all together.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And Steve Carell, what a actor he became. Like I remember seeing him on the Daily Show, not thinking much. Then he did the 40-Year-Old Virgin. I go, this guy's funny. And as he's doing the 40-Year-Old Virgin, that's when The Office came out.
Yeah.
And the first episode I ever saw of The Office, I stumbled upon it, and it was a scene, and I believe this scene was improvised, where he's like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, right? And he goes to kiss Oscar.
Yeah.
And I literally didn't even see most of the episode, right? Yep. And I turn into that, and I'm laughing so hard.
Great episode.
That I was just like, I was all in on it after that. So
I will say this, too. Sopranos and Office, honestly, probably more The Office, certainly can't make that show now. Sometimes I go back and watch episodes and it's like, eesh, that was a little tough.
But I also think looking back at The Office though, if you, and people, this might piss people off. If you are an intelligent person, right, you can understand the comedy of it without being offended by it, because
you have to know the context.
It is things that happen in our everyday life. When people go back and say, The Office is so risky, I go, it's not.
It's not. No, I agree. And it's Michael Scott specifically, you need to know his character. The comedy of his character is he doesn't know that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be Michael Scott if those things weren't part of his day-to-day. It's just, and this goes back to the very beginning of the episode, now there's a platform where you can post and protest The Office if it came out today. Back then, it was like, there's a funny show. I get it. So, no, good point.
Facebook was around, though. I mean, it was only, I think, there's about a year difference between the two. But I do think that there is this cancel culture that is more loud than it's ever been. So when a show like that gets brought up, I go, you're just an idiot and you don't get it.
I agree. You had a great line in the episode of Soapy talking about the silent majority. They're not that silent.
No. No.
Talking about something else, obviously, but still, I thought that was hilarious.
They love to say that. But
exactly. We hear you loud and clear.
Kurt Angle or Bret the Hitman Hart?
Oh, Hitman. Not even close. He might be my number one. Big Hitman guy. Best color scheme in the history of wrestling, in my opinion.
And he was the one that picked up the pieces, because it sounds like you started watching in '93. Hogan left. I mean, Hogan already left. Then he came back, got the title, lost the title, was done for good, and Bret Hart was there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, my first real rivalries, whatever relationships I remember is Brett and Sean, Hart Foundation in general. I do vividly remember the not the Heartbreakers, the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, which was a little before. But yeah, they had some good storylines around there, and then going into the Attitude Era, like I said, I think 14 just kind of kicked it up to the next level. But no, I'm always a big Hitman guy.
Yeah, bringing up the Rockers, if you go back and watch some of the Superstar episodes on Saturday mornings, some really shocking stuff happened. I mean, when Michaels threw Jannetty through the window, Jake Roberts had the Snake bite Randy Savage.
Big Jake Roberts guy too.
Papa Shango put the curse.
Damien and Lucifer.
Oh yeah,
big Jake the Snake guy. Papa Shango legit scared me. Like I remember as a little kid, like having to almost like turn my head, like watching him. And there was I remember the ridiculous storyline with the Undertaker, the Ultimate Warrior, with like the whatever. I don't know how they did that back in the day. It was just like
the throwing up, the black coming down. I go back and watch the video of Ultimate Warrior, which terrified me as a kid.
Oh hell yeah!
When you go back and watch him throwing up in that scene, he was like, like it's freaking hilarious.
Yep. Coked out of his mind, probably hungover, just like I can't believe I have to do this shit on Saturday morning.
And then he got fired again around that time. So, Shawn Michaels or Ric Flair?
Oh, that's a good one. In wrestling, Shawn Michaels. Outside of wrestling, Ric Flair all day. Ric Flair is he's just a goat in himself. He is timeless.
I mean, Shawn Michaels was a lot like Flair, but he got clean and decided.
I think the thing about like being a wrestling fan and a sports fan, which sounds like we both are, people forget like professional wrestlers are elite level athletes. Like Shawn Michaels, one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen in my life. He just happened to pick up wrestling instead of a more mainstream sport. You know, like the shit he was doing back, because he was one of those high flyers, but he was still a big dude. You know what I mean? Probably explains why his back's like literally falling apart, but yeah, Shawn Michaels, I think, is probably in my top 3, definitely 5, like in ring performers of all time, 100%.
I will say is you have to be. I went to wrestling school for the day one time, not too long ago, and you really understand that you got to be athletically talented to do a lot of things that are asked of you to do,
and you have to do it 350 days a year.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people don't get out of the independents. There's only so much room. You really got to have, you really got to have it.
Yeah.
Final question. This is always the hardest question of blank versus blank. Soapy pre-up or my old college roommate, Corey Walker?
That's a great question. I love myself some Corey Walker. I think I have to answer this in a business sense. I'll go with Soapy pre-up. We can't afford to have any chemistry issues on the show. So
yeah, that could cause some issues. We don't want to tear the show apart.
No, can't do that yet.
Ring. But Dan, I do appreciate you coming on. Maybe once COVID calms down, maybe we could have.
I'd love to go to the studio. Yeah.
You and Soapy in there together. So we'll see how that goes. But
thanks for having me, man. And then we'll get you guys on the our podcast soon too. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were talking sometime. So,
all right.
But everybody, continue to keep your heads up. Wear your damn mask, and until next time, let freedom ring.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.